Yeah, it automatically records.
Okay, great. Thank you. I
No
did
problem.
bring the recorders, so.
Hello,
All right.
Lee.
Lee, you are good to go whenever you'd like.
Very good. So I should be starting this meeting.
You should be.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the June 18th Zoom meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. For all present, let's spend a few minutes reviewing how this meeting will be conducted. For the first 2 hours prior to 9:30 p.m., we shall hold a public hearing on the applications that you received a notice on and that were listed in the Norwalk Hour for the hearing. After the application is announced by the chair, that would be me, and read by the secretary, that would be Andy Conroy, the applicant will identify themselves, come forward, obviously state his or her name for the record, and then present the appeal or relief being sought. Please present those zoning issues that are relevant to the practical difficulties or hardship requiring this application. After you or your representative has spoken, those in favor will have the chance to be heard. After that segment, those against the application will have the opportunity to state their opposition for the record. In the case of an appeal, the zoning staff will have the opportunity to present their findings. Finally, after those against the application have spoken, the applicant and only the applicant will have the opportunity to rebut and respond to the issues raised. The hearing is then closed and the next application called. New applications will not normally be heard after 9:30 p.m. as the board must discuss and act upon these applications. Please note that no further public input is accepted at that time. You are welcome to stay or keep logged on for this portion of tonight's meeting, but should you decide to leave, you may contact the zoning office tomorrow morning to learn about our decision. Before we proceed tonight, I must remind you that this hearing is recorded and will become a matter of permanent public record. Additionally, all information, including photographs and maps submitted to the board prior to this Zoom meeting, will become part of the public record and must remain with the board. The first case to be heard this evening is application
Want me to go?
Yes, please.
Okay. 20-031901 for Westmere LLC. It is a variance to rebuild, reconstruct structure, single-family residence previously granted by variance. Setbacks of front, side, and rear. Section 118-340C. Front setback required 30 feet, 5 feet existing, and 5 feet proposed. Side setback required 6 feet, 1.6 feet existing and proposed. Rear setback 15 feet required, 25 feet to 5 feet various existing and proposed. In a B residence zone, property located at 4 Westmere Avenue, District 6, Block 33, Lot 23, CAM. The applicant is requesting variances, as is obvious, to reconstruct and elevate an existing single-family residence previously granted by variance. Background: a variance granted in 1970 to convert a detached garage into a single-family residence. The applicant has included copies of the map and variance certificate with the narrative. Analysis and findings of our staff. The existing dwelling is 600 square feet, consisting of a living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a bath. The proposal is to construct a new residence on the same footprint, raise the dwelling to meet flood, I think there's a word missing there, requirements, provide parking underneath, and add a 396 square feet half story. The building will comply with all zoning requirements for height, flood, etc. The lowest floor will not count as a story if constructed with breakaway walls as proposed. Elevating existing non-conforming structures or reconstructing dwellings that comply with the flood requirements has been encouraged. That's it. Lee.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Will the applicant please identify themselves and come forward?
Certainly.
I'm sorry, can I just state first for the record that the green cards or the return receipts were emailed to me. I have copies of them. When you get a moment, if you could send me the actual hard copies, that would be great. Appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and the public. My name is attorney Albert G. Vasco from the firm of Tierney, Zulo, Flaherty, and Murphy, here tonight representing for Westmere LLC and its principal, Richard Wood. I've previously provided staff with the green card receipts and proof of mailing. Aileen, I did put the originals in the mail to you, so you should be getting them shortly. We are seeking variances tonight to reconstruct the house on the same footprint that currently exists. The variants we are seeking are the same variants that this board granted in 1970 to the previous owner of the property. Those variants were for the front, side, and rear setback lines. The variants were granted in connection with converting an existing structure into a single-family home. The building actually dates back to at least 1950 and was previously used at one time as a garage. 4 Westmere Avenue was created as a building lot in 1905 by a subdivision map entitled Map of Portion of Bell Island, 1905, C.N. Wood, Civil Engineer, which was filed on the land records as map number 187. The lot predates zoning and is considered a valid building lot. The size of the lot, 2,401 square feet, is non-conforming to today's zoning requirements of 6,250 square feet. The property has been subject to flooding in the past, and the impetus for requesting the variances today is to raise the structure to comply with the FEMA requirements and the city's zoning regulations. The structure's current elevation is 8.5 feet, and the current FEMA flood elevation is AE 15 feet. My clients were originally going to raise the existing structure, but determined that given the age of the building, 70 years, it made more sense to demolish the existing structure and build a new building on the same footprint, which is permitted by your regulations. There's at least 3 reasons that this makes sense to do it this way. As indicated, the property was originally a garage, so there's really no floor structure to properly lift the existing building. The construction time will be greatly reduced by allowing the demolition of the existing building and the construction of a new building. And 3, the new building can comply or exceed the energy and construction codes and building codes. As part of the new construction, my client would like to add a half-story addition to the residence. The existing house is just 600 square feet, and we are proposing a 396 square foot addition as a half story. The half story is within the roof line, so there would be no added mass to the building by allowing the half story. The current residence contains 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The proposed addition would add a 3rd bedroom and a bath. The lower level will consist of a garage and storage areas and will be constructed with breakaway walls to comply with FEMA's regulations. It will allow for off-street parking for the property. As you are probably aware, many of the Belle Island properties do not have off-street parking, and this will, in a little way, help the parking situation in the area. The proposed dwelling will comply with all zoning regulations except for the variances we are requesting. They are the front yard existing and proposed 5.5 feet, side yard 1.6 feet, which is existing and what we are proposing, and the rear yard, which varies from 25 feet to 5 feet, as the lot is triangular in shape. The height of the new structure will be 31.5 feet to the peak, well below the allowable 39 feet in this zone. The practical difficulties and unnecessary hardship is the size and configuration of the lot. While it is a valid legal building lot, it is undersized for today's zoning regulations, which is true of many of the residences on Belle Island, which are either non-conforming or exist by variance. It would be impossible to construct any dwelling on the property using today's standards. The ZBA previously found a hardship in granting the previous variances in 1970. There have been no changes that would obviate that finding. Case law states that where a variance has been found, the board cannot overturn that finding absent a substantial change of material circumstances. The new structure will comply with the FEMA regulations and be constructed with breakaway walls, which will make it safer and more flood resistant, will reduce the potential damage to other properties in a flooding event. As a neighbor has pointed out, during unusual high tides, the property sometimes floods. This will alleviate that issue. Some neighbors are concerned about possible damage to Gateway Park. My client will be required in the permitting process to develop plans to ensure that no damage is done to neighboring property, and will be required to establish soil and erosion controls to protect the tidal wetlands. As Ms. Rochford pointed out in her report, elevating and/or reconstructing buildings so that they comply with the FEMA flood regulations has been encouraged. The variants we are requesting are the same ones previously granted and are the minimal necessary to reconstruct the existing building on the same footprint. We ask that you look favorably upon our request. If you have any questions, I'd be.
Well, actually, you made a statement that I would like clarified.
Sure.
You stated that the construction of this house will alleviate flooding on the property. How can that be accomplished if you can't change the contours of the land?
What I meant was that with the raising of the structure and the breakaway walls, any flooding would not affect the living area of that property. In an event of severe flooding, the breakaway walls would prevent the building from being washed away or severely damaged, which would then likely damage some of the adjacent properties.
So the property is still going to flood in a manner it has almost forever.
Yes, I mean, unfortunately, we can't change.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that you didn't,
Yeah.
that the application does not include recontouring the land to alleviate flooding on the property and therefore affect adjoining property owners.
No, it does not.
Okay. Other board members wish to speak up on this?
So this is Greg here. I had a question just for clarification. If they decide to, if we approve this and the whole thing is demolished, is the question that, number one, they still need their variances in place and that the house is fully demolished, they lose those? Is that the question? Because I know that one of the stipulations is, you know, you have to leave one wall up. So I'm trying to get an idea of exactly what is the issue. Is it that, or is it something else?
Well, the issue is that when you have a variance, you can rebuild the entire structure. What you're talking about where you need to leave one wall up was if the building was non-conforming and did not have a variance, then you would not be able to rebuild on that footprint, although the law has changed since that in 2018, the law changed so that you could actually now demolish a non-conforming building and rebuild it on the existing footprint.
So Aileen, this is a question for you, just for my clarification. So does it make a difference, like, you know, let's just say that we prove this. Does it make a difference to us whether or not it's totally demolished or just, you know, I mean, I've seen the house, it needs to be totally demolished, but does it make a difference how they do it?
The entire building needs to be demolished because that's what their application is for.
Right.
If they can't think about just leaving one wall up, they have to take the whole thing down. And they're changing the configuration of the building that was originally approved by variance. It's going up another story and a half, or what we would consider to be, it's really only a story and a half, but they're actually putting the parking underneath. So for all intents and purposes, it's 2.5 stories. And that's different than what was originally approved by the board, which was just converting what was a garage into living space.
I would imagine that there is no foundation under the garage except maybe a 18-inch stem wall below grade. So certainly what is existing couldn't support the structure above at this point and meet building code.
Right.
So you would need to demolish the entire structure to accomplish this.
I'm still surprised that house isn't floated away quite yet. It's a matter of time. I see it flood there all the time. It's an absolute disaster for the renters and people in that area.
Well, that's why they're proposing to demolish and, you know, build new structure.
Ted had a comment. Go ahead, Ted.
I have a couple of questions, if I could. The concern about the wetlands on the property and the adjoining properties. Is it a legitimate concern that the wetlands will be damaged as a result of this project?
I mean, certainly that's a concern. However, my client cannot, in the course of construction, damage the wetlands. If somehow that happened, you would have to remediate what he did. But our construction plans are not to go into the wetland area or to damage the wetland areas. And that's why, as I indicated, when we get our zoning and building permits, it'll be clear that we will need to establish sediment and erosion control so that there are no damage to the tidal wetlands.
So I understand the answer to be, in the event of any damage during construction, the wetlands would be remediated, at least to the condition that they're in now. Is that right?
That is correct. The city would certainly make us do that.
Okay. What about the concern about access to the adjacent park, especially during construction? Will the access be affected?
It should not be. We're proposing to put up a construction fence along the border of the park so that we do not encroach upon the park, and there should be no issues with that. And actually, by demolishing the existing building and putting up a new building, the construction time will be greatly reduced.
If I may follow up a little bit on Tad's question about the wetlands, has this project been before conservation?
It has not.
Will it?
That I'm not sure, but we need to go to the zoning commission for a CAM application. So that is next on the.
Okay, so you've got to laundry list of commissions to be heard in front of.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a,
You mentioned that building height would only be added to by raising it roughly 1 story to get out of the floodwaters. How do you fit it into the roof line so that there's really no change to the roof?
I believe my client is on the call, Mr. Wood, who is the architect also on the project. I'm sure he would be able to probably better answer that question. I'm not sure how we get him to into the meeting.
What's his name now?
Richard Wood is his name. He's the architect.
All right, I'm gonna guess that it's Richard, and I'll let me see if I,
Think he's in the attendees?
yeah, I just moved him over. Where'd he go? There he is. Richard, you're unmuted. Are you the applicant?
I am.
Okay.
I was trying to understand if you could tell me the current building height max and the new building height max, and explain how you're going to fit into the current roof line as the building goes up, but the roof doesn't change, and add the space that you're asking for in the half story.
Well, to clarify, it wouldn't be fitting into the current roof line. It would be fitting into the proposed roof line, which is approximately 6 feet higher than the existing, which is the slope is very low on that. So conceptually, it's fitting within the perceived roof line. It's not adding 8-foot walls on all 4 sides and then a roof. It's tucked within our proposed roof.
I could add to Andy's. So can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay.
That's great.
So how much higher would it be than the existing building that's currently there? Because you're talking about 3 stories, and that's an awkward looking building in that small space.
Well, from my
That was
the drawing, the proposed building is almost 3 times the height of the existing structure.
Okay, so once again, the current maximum height to the peak of the roof is, and the new maximum height to the peak of the roof is, what are those 2 numbers?
The maximum height given is 39 feet, and we're bringing it in at 31'8".
That's just to be clear, the maximum allowed is 39.
Okay, and the current height of the building is what? 14, 15?
I believe so, yes.
So in mass, it looks twice as big, roughly.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is I've driven down that road quite a bit, and I feel like this would be kind of a thinner, taller type of a house, but it doesn't seem like, at least from my perspective, it would be drastically higher or shorter than any of the other houses out there. It's not going to be like the Empire State Building in the middle of the city, right? Considering that the maximum height for that neighborhood is 39, and they're going to go 31. So it might look a little odd, but it's not drastically higher than, or it's not higher than any of the other ones, I don't think. Thoughts on that, Richard, or anyone else?
It'll be lower than most of the buildings in the area.
Yeah, it will certainly be lower than the property at 6 Westmere, which is the 41,000 square foot house. Ours with the addition will be just under 1,000 square feet.
Just to clarify, the flood elevation is AE elevation 15. Right now, the existing grade at the house is roughly 6, 8, something like that. I mean, Richard, you may be able to clarify that, but the base flood is A15, which needs to be the underside of the, what needs to be the first floor plus a foot. So,
Yep, the existing floor elevation is 8.5 feet. So a lot that goes into the height for our proposal is adding just over 10 feet to reach the FEMA requirement of 15 feet plus.
The thing that I think I recognize is that to necessarily approve of the architectural impact, we have approved all requests to raise houses. We haven't turned one down.
I can't.
However, the addition of a half story is another matter.
I'd like to bring up a silly little point. The drawings on the cover sheet of the drawings are titled Additions and Renovations. This is neither an addition or a renovation. This is a new structure. And I would hope that you would correct that on future application.
I do stand corrected on that, and I will make that correction immediately.
Thank you.
I think that just stems from earlier proposals, and I never circled back to that. But
A minor point, but
No, it's-
you know, technicalities being what they are. Anybody?
a clarification on the roof that the proposed roof ridge is 6 feet higher than the existing. So that's the difference between the existing building roof. The new building roof is just 6 feet in order to accommodate the attic half story, second half story.
Quite frankly, it doesn't look like that. I think it's considerably higher unless your drawings are out of scale.
I don't believe that they are. I just generally scaled it here, and I'm coming up with 6 feet between, but I can clarify that if we.
I am going to leave my computer for a second. I need to get a scale. I am back. If I scale the drawings, and I hate doing that, it appears on the existing house, the ridge is 13 feet above grade. On the proposed elevation, the ridge, again, scaling it, is 30 feet plus or minus. So the difference is that this house is more than twice the height of existing.
I was referring to the framing over the what we'll call the first floor, which is the living area, to the proposed ridge. And the, say, the attic rafters of the existing house to the existing ridge.
Well, I mean, you know, it's potato here. And, you know, I've been an architect for an awful long time and I know how to scale a drawing. And whether you take it from a new floor elevation or an old floor elevation, we start off with what's at grade. That's all. I mean, you're compliant. We just need to, you know, get beyond that. I mean, the house obviously meets the height requirement and there's no issue about it, but it is taller than what you are telling us.
If there's no further comment, you want to open up to public, we can do that.
Okay, we'll only take public that is in favor of the project first.
So if anyone in the public that's attending the meeting, if you're using Zoom, if you could use your raise your hand feature, and then I can call on you. If you're dialed in by a telephone, you can dial *9, and that will raise your hand. And right now we're just doing people who are looking to speak in favor of the application. And we'll give it about.
When they speak, they need to say who they are and what their address is.
Correct.
Do you want to clarify where they raise their hand, just so they know for those that are new to Zoom?
Yeah, so Greg, if you go to the bottom of the screen and click on participants, it'll pull up everybody in the meeting. Panelists are staff, ZBA members, and applicants, and then attendees are the public. And you'll be able to see a little blue icon come up if anyone raises their hand. I know Deborah has raised her hand earlier. I don't think she's speaking in favor of the application. Seeing that we've gotten no.
You have one.
Yeah.
Deborah McQuinney.
Yeah, she raised it earlier. I don't think she's speaking in favor though.
Okay.
Well, then we'll move on, seeing that there are no participants in favor of this project. I guess we'll move on to those that are opposed.
All right, so Deborah, I'm going to move you over. All right, Debbie, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'm slightly confused with the elevations, but we haven't, the neighbors.
Deborah, can you just say your name and your address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. My name is Deborah McQuinney. I'm the owner and resident of 6 Westmere, the next door neighbor. And I'm speaking tonight, not just for myself, but for 60 members of our community who are generally opposed to this new building. We fully understand that when someone owns a property that, they can build on it. But we think that there are extenuating circumstances about this particular residence that are an issue. The first one you've already discussed, which is this is a very small lot and is particularly close to both the street and to the park, which is where kids play. But the areas that we're most concerned about are the impact on our community property. And I think it was Mr. Vasco's point that he basically all but conceded that there will be some impact to the park and to the wetlands, and that they will remediate it at the end of the project. It is the position of those of us who own property on Bell Island and communally own the park that that's an unacceptable solution. We believe, and certainly I did a remodel of my house, that that the slab cement that this house exists on today will need to be removed, and that the pilings that will be necessary because of the flooding that happens in this particular area, particularly on that lot, is so extensive that the engineering components of this, which I'm not sure that you have, really should be part of the approval process, because for the number of pilings that they're going to need to support a 3-story structure, it's going to be very, very hard to do it and to build the frames that people need to have to build those pilings without disrupting our property. And it isn't his property, I mean, at that point. Secondly, as we pointed out in the letter that we sent to all of you, there's a rock right on the corner of the property that is the 18 inches from the park. And in order to do the structural work, I would say that he's going to have to take the rock out. The rock then destabilizes the wetlands in the park. And I would think that, you know, a special review of that would be necessary. The builder conceded that having a very strong construction fence ideally will be put up to protect not only my property, but the park area and have the safety of the residents, I think is really key. But it should be noted that that should be on his property, not on the Bell Island property. And that I think the last thing is that we would want to say, because I don't want to repeat the letter since that I've got all of it, is that in order to build this and build this level of a structure and to approve it on, you know, tonight or to move forward, we really think that you ought to see the detailed engineering plans. I know when I did a patio, that the city engineers came back after the original approval and had me put, I think.
Deborah, I think you're making a very good point, but it's not within our bailiwick to review and approve engineering drawings. We are strictly here to deal with the zoning aspects of this project. So you may continue.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know that.
That our responsibilities are limited. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for clarifying that. I've never done one of these before. So the last point that we want to make is just to make certain that equipment and trucks and things that they would need are not going to be taking up our space, that this construction would be done on one of the major arteries and emergency evacuation streets. So that would need to be accommodated.
I would certainly agree with that. It's a necessity that the contractor is going to have to very carefully stage this project. And he can't leave materials or trucks on public or private land that is not part of this project.
Yeah, so then the only other thing I would say is that I think it's really critical that the builder realize that that the remediation that they would do would be on their property, that you know, the planning board or, you know, anybody else. I mean, this is communal property and you know, really takes the community to say, yes, you can hurt our property and then put it back. They should go into this knowing that they don't get that hardship. They have to come up with a way to build this without damaging our property, not say mea culpa and then rectify it later. They're going into this with the full knowledge of how the tide works, how much water comes onto that property, and that it is not, that 18 inches is a precarious position.
Very
All
good.
right, all set, Deborah?
I am done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
If anybody else is looking to speak, please use the raise your hand function or dial *9.
If we don't get any more participants, Lee, did you want to read, or Andy, read into the record the letters that we did get in opposition?
We just got.
Kip Ford is raised.
Yep.
His
So let me
hand.
move Kip.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. You'll all recall, I believe, that the Belle Island Bridge was rebuilt
Please,
several years
before you
ago.
proceed, give us your
My apologies.
address.
My name is Kip Ford, Christopher Ford. I live at 4 Brown Place, about 50 yards away from this proposed property, and I am one of the 125 plus homeowners that own the park that this property abuts. So I have some concern about this property and the rebuilding process. You'll recall that back in 2014, I believe, the Belle Island Bridge was reconstructed and a traffic study was undertaken, and it was determined that the bridge could not be the road, Westmere Avenue, could not be totally closed for the construction of the bridge, but rather had to be done one lane and then a second lane individually. In part, I believe that's probably because this is a state emergency evacuation route, as it is through Pine Point Road and South Beach Road, in order to have exits for residents of these various communities in case one of those exits is in some way blocked by an emergency. And I'm assuming that the builder understands that all construction, therefore, is going to have to happen within the footprint of this building, not on the road itself, which can't be closed in order for him to do the building that he's undertaking. So that's my first point. My second point is on behalf of someone who I believe was going to be on the call, but I don't believe he is, Jim Falsey, who's a builder and owns a property across the street from this property right now that he's just completed. And Jim's question, and he asked me to raise this question, was who is going to be responsible or accept responsibility for the environmental damage that occurs? And I think you've talked about the remediation here. But Jim's point is that the city or the developer should be required to post a cash bond in the amount of $1 million in order to assure that this property and the environmental impact that it causes, it does not impact the environment and therefore doesn't get improperly restored to its value, and that it actually gets executed.
Well, that certainly would be not the city posting a bond. That would be the homeowner, the property owner.
Okay.
And that is an item that would have to be discussed with Conservation Commission and zoning. Again, it's out of our responsibility. However, we can put conditions on our approval if we approve this project.
Okay. And that would be a condition that, therefore, that I would ask be placed on this, and we'll make a point of bringing that up before the Conservation Committee as well.
All set, Kip?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to this project?
Deborah raised her hand again. I'm going to leave it up to you, Lee, whether you will allow her to speak again.
Normally we don't.
Okay.
However, Deborah, if you are brief, you may speak again.
I will be very brief. I think it's very important that you realize that 60 members of our community asked me to represent them tonight. So rather than having 60 different people come on and represent opposition. So I don't want.
I
hope,
recognize that, and I'm actually pleased that we're not listening to 60 people say the same things to us. So we will take
That's
that
all I
into
ask.
consideration.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Please use the raise your hand function or *9.
Okay, seeing none, you don't have anybody, do you, Brian?
Nope. Go ahead, Andy.
We have several letters. I'm going to see if I can condense this a little bit. On June 16th, we received a follow-up letter, basically, from Melissa Keaton, I guess it is. It's either Keaton or Keaton. And she was explaining that the letter that they had submitted on the 11th of March remained their position, that there were other viewpoints in the community and they would be separately told to us, but their position of March 11th remained the same. And I'm going to read that. To whom it may concern, I am submitting this letter on behalf of the Belle Island Improvement Association, which is BIIA, in conjunction with the application for variance that has been filed for the above named property. The BIA owns 2 Westmere Avenue, also known as the Gateway Park, which abuts Westmere to the north and south. The BIA owns and maintains Gateway Park for the use of its members. The BIA opposes the application for variance for 4 Westmere Avenue due to concerns about damage to our abutting property and or adjacent total wetland, as well as potential danger to the users of Gateway Park and or interference with the use of Gateway Park by members of the BIA. I think they mean interference to them. Given the proximity of the existing structure and the proposed structure to the Gateway Park property, we are concerned that it will be impossible to demolish the existing structure and to excavate for a new foundation without causing significant potential permanent damage to Gateway Park. Additionally, such damage may impact the ability of BIA members to use the property. We respectfully request that these factors be taken into consideration in evaluating the application for variance and that our objections be made part of the ZBA record concerning the matter. Sincerely, Melissa McKeithen, President, Belle Island Improvement Association. And if I screwed up your name, Melissa, you'll have to correct me later. The next is a communication from by email Deborah McLinney. I would think Deborah has made herself clear, but let me scan this real quick and see if there's something else in it. She did ask that Marilyn Altman take a look, and I don't know if Marilyn has. Marilyn's not with the board this evening.
Just to clarify, Andy, after I got that email, I did let her know that most of the board members do go by the properties, whether they're in the neighborhood or not, but you all generally go by and take a look at the properties in advance of the hearings.
Yep. I know I did. I'm sure the other members did.
Yes.
To the zoning.
That's a yes for me too.
How many of these do you want to do? All of them, right? There are quite a few. Let me see if I can boil this down a little bit.
Aileen, have we received all the letters that Andy has?
And sent to you by email, I think.
I sent
Yeah.
everything that we've received by email to you.
You know, to save the time of reading every one of them,
A lot.
we put them in the official portion of this to be attached rather than reading.
They can be included in the record.
Yes. Anyone on the board opposed to that?
No,
I
not
think-
opposed.
I think that I'm looking to see if there's another point in here that's unique, and there's discussions about the owner's use of it as rental property, and they're not objecting to their continued use as a rental property. They're objecting to gaining the variances and making the construction changes. Other than that, they're okay with it. And that supposedly represents the point of view of about 60 people.
Well, I think that's sufficient. We include those letters as part of the official record of this hearing. We don't need to really read them all. I think it's just going to be, as Deborah said, more of the same.
As long as you all confirm that you've received the letters, you've read them yourselves, and you're happy to include them as part of your thought process, I think that works fine.
I have received them, read them, and believe they should be included as part of this meeting.
As hi. Anybody else?
As have
Yes.
Okay.
Received, read, and drove by.
All righty. That's Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
make it happen.
Okay, I am going to ask Mr. Vasco if he would like to make a rebuttal statement to anything that he's heard from the public at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few comments on the comments tonight, and also a couple of comments on the letters that were received by the board and made a part of the record. Basically, Ms. McWeeney's comments, most of them concern construction methods and how the construction is going to take place and whether there's going to be any damage to the neighboring properties or the wetlands. Just let me clarify the statement that I made earlier. I didn't say that there was going to be damage to the tidal wetlands. I said if in the extreme, if that actually happened, then obviously my client would need to remediate any damage that was done. However, our goal is to not impact the neighboring properties or the tidal wetlands in any manner. That is certainly our goal. But no one can guarantee that that's absolutely going to happen. So if something did happen and occurred, we would need to remediate any damage that may be done. Not that we believe that there will be any. Obviously, we can't use the road to store construction materials or block the road. And we know that, and the city would certainly not let us do that. Just going through my notes here, the letter that Mr. Falsey and Mr. Ford submitted indicated that they didn't think my client was that concerned with the flood elevation because another house that he is constructing in the area at 2 Brown Place, the elevation of that property, I think, was 8.5 feet. However, that property is not in the AE 15 flood zone. Only a small portion along Westmere Road is where the house actually is located, is not in the AE flood zone, is in the X flood zone. And the Belle Island Improvement Association's concerns basically were any damage to the park or danger to the people using the park. As indicated, we do not plan on doing any damage to the park, and we are going to put up a construction fence to mitigate any potential harm to any persons using the park during the construction that we're doing. And Mr. Ford, in his letter and comments, indicated that by raising this house up was going to destroy the integrity and beauty of Belle Island by overdeveloping the property. Should be noted that his property is twice as big as our property with the proposed addition, and that his property is also next to 2 Brown Place, which is across the street from our property and is owned by an LLC, which my clients are involved with, which they're building a house there, and it's probably going to obstruct somewhat of his view from his existing house, which is possibly one of the reasons why he's upset. And the other issue that I want to make is the letter that Ms. McWeeney submitted with a petition from 60 people. Well, there's 60 people, but there's 7 from one family, 5 from another family. It's not 60 separate individuals. There's a number of duplicates. And so, the number is not the actual number is not 60 is what I'm trying to say. I think what we are proposing is clearly a benefit to the area and to the house. It will raise the structure out of the flood zone and make it compliant with FEMA regulations, and it's variances that had been previously granted for this property, and we would ask that you look favorably on our application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vasco, thank you for your comments. At this point, I will bang my gavel and close this item of the public hearing. We will move on to the next application.
It is 20-06-1801 Zion Properties LLC, Caravelle Subaru. Variances for additional signage, 2 signs allowed, 2 signs proposed, section 118-1294A1, and variance of allowed directional signage, 2 square feet allowed, 4 feet in height allowed, 15.5 square feet and 14 feet, 8 inches high proposed for service sign, section 118-1293, 1 or ID, and variance of street number requirement, section 118-1294D3, located in business number 2 zone. Property located at 512, second number, 528 Main Avenue, District 5, Lot 22C, lots 41, 66, and 8. Request variance for, just to boil it down, variance for architectural wall sign on the front of the building, variance to allow a service sign, variance to allow the elimination of the street number from the ground sign. The contract purchase has filed a special permit application, and it's a purchaser, zoning commission, to operate a car dealership on the 4.27 acre site. The proposed building will be approximately 45,500 square feet and contain showroom and service area on the first floor, offices for the dealership, and a 2nd story parking deck on the 2nd floor. Analysis and findings of the staff. The request for a number of signs variance is reasonable given the size of the site. The service area sign is also reasonable. The request to vary the regulation to not require a street number on the ground sign is impractical. North and southbound traffic on Main Avenue rely on street numbers to locate their destinations, not just car dealership. National branding specifications are not a zoning hardship. Additionally, the city code requires street numbers be visible from the street to moving traffic at the entrance where the building is set back 50 feet from the street. The fire marshal enforces this regulation, and a copy was probably sent to the applicant. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, will the applicant come forward and identify themselves?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Bernheim. I'm an attorney at Haller & Sage, which is a law firm in Westport. And I'm representing the property or contract purchasers, Zion Properties. Zion Properties is really the Caravelle family, Jeremy and Paul Caravelle, who are also here with me tonight. And they operate Caravelle Subaru as well as another dealership in town. So we're here tonight for 3 different lots, 512, 516, and 520 through 528 Main Avenue. That's essentially the Ethan Allen, the best friends, in the former car wash lots on Main Avenue, right next to the DMV. It's approximately combined to be 4.27 acres, and the objective is if we obtain all the approvals necessary, and we still have to go to the zoning commission for that, that we will merge the 3 lots into one. So presently there are 3 separate lots, and could have 3 separate buildings on them, all with their own signage. We're in a B2 zone, and the plan is to demolish the existing structures that are still on the site, and construct approximately 45,500 square foot dealership with a showroom, lounge, service, storage areas, a drop off and for service and associated parking, as well as offices on the 2nd floor and a parking deck on the 2nd floor above the building. Originally, when we submitted this application before things slowed down quite a bit for obvious reasons, we had asked for 7 variances. We used that delay to have another conversation with Subaru National, and they allowed us to remove 4 of those variances. So we were tonight only asking for 3. After we saw Aileen's staff report, I had another conversation with my client, who then spoke with Subaru National, and we can withdraw the ground sign variance request, where we were asking not to put the numbers of the property address on the ground sign. So really, tonight now, all we're asking for is 2 variances. We're requesting a 3rd wall sign, as staff is considering the Subaru logo to be a separate wall sign, and we're asking for permission to do a larger directional sign for service over the service area. If you take a look at the Claris plan with the west front elevation, that's really the only plan that's pertinent for our discussion tonight, hopefully. It shows 3 wall signs on the, I'll call it the top left portion of the building. Caravelle, the Subaru logo, and the stone tower in the middle of the building there, as well as Subaru directly to the right of the slate icon tower.
If you have it on your screen, you can share it if you'd like.
Okay.
That capability might be helpful.
Let me see. Okay, can you see this now?
Yep.
Perfect. So here are the 3 signs that I'm talking about, the Caravelle sign, the Subaru icon, and the Subaru wording. So we're requesting those variances. One, for safety reasons, it's a large building. It's taking up 3 lots, as I said earlier. If this stayed at 3 lots and there are 3 separate buildings, you could have up to 6 signs on those 3 lots because we're merging them. Our hardship is really safety as well as size of lot. And unlike most other variances where you hear size of lot is a hardship because it's too small, I'm telling you that it's too big. The lot is too big. We're merging the 3, and we should have, or we're requesting permission for a 3rd wall sign so that people driving up and down Main Avenue will be able to see us easily and not have to slam on their brakes as they're pulling into the dealership. It is also required by a national branding requirement that these 3 signs, the dealership name, meaning the Caravelle name, needs to be on the building, the icon needs to be on the building, and Subaru needs to be on the building. We attempted to move Subaru a little bit closer to the icon so that it would be considered one sign, but because of that slate tower protrudes out, it was deemed to be a separate sign, which is why we're here tonight. It's worth noting that we're permitted to have up to 255 square feet of signage on this building frontage. And with these 3 signs, we're only asking for 171.29 square feet on the front of walls for wall signage. So that is variance number 1 requesting. Variance number 2 is the directional signage, which is on the right side of the building, just over one of the service bays.
Hey, Eric, can you try to keep the microphone closer to your mouth when you turn to look at your screen? We lose you a little bit, please.
Sure, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
So the second variance is right here, this service sign. It's approximately 14.6 feet, 14 and a half feet to the top of it, and it's 18-inch illuminated panels for 15.5 square feet total. whereas only, I believe 2 square feet is permitted and only usually 4 feet high. Again, this is important for safety because of it is a large lot. It's going to have 3 different driveways and lots of circulation. And we believe that we do just as much service as we do car sales. And in order for a safe circulation on the site, we want people to know where they're supposed to be going for this service. So that's really it. We're asking for the 3rd wall sign, the larger than permitted service sign. Everything else that we've proposed to zoning complies, and we are withdrawing tonight the request for the ground sign to not have to put the street address on it. I'm not sure what street address will be designated, but whatever the number is, we'll put on there. In approving this, you can rely on the safety issues as well as the merging of the 3 lots as your hardship. We're also reducing a prior nonconformity because the Ethan Allen site had received multiple variances from this board in the past, and those variances are no longer necessary. One was for a taller than usual ground sign. We've designed our ground sign to be fully compliant with the regulations, so we are reducing some of those nonconformities and really just asking for 3 wall signs on a 3-lot parcel that will eventually be merged. So that's my story for tonight. I have my clients here should you have any questions for them, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have for me. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I only have one question, and that is, has their attorney reviewed the ordinance that pertains to the numbering for buildings and trailers? And is he going to explain that to the client so that the client can correctly include it under the auspices of the ordinance?
Well, I think that's an important element. We can certainly raise the point during this discussion. But obviously anything they do is going to have to be zoning compliant.
The project will get reviewed by not only the building department. If it were to be approved by the zoning commission, the process would then be, it would go to the building department and the fire marshal's office. And the fire marshal is the one who regulates any numbering on the building or on any street signs. So it would go through them, not to worry about that.
Okay.
Okay.
And if I can add, we did have a code review meeting with fire marshal, building, engineering, and every department. Brian Baker was there as well. So we certainly are keeping them in the loop of what we planned, and we got the thumbs up to proceed as we continue to move forward. So we will certainly comply with everything that we need to comply with.
Very good.
Okay. I don't have any other specific questions. Does any other member of the board have a question?
No questions.
I would also like to remind the board that last year we reviewed and approved signage on the Chrysler Jeep Caravelle dealership on Route 1 also. So we've been through this, and I think they did a very good job in following through what was asked of them. Any other comments? Well, hearing none, I will ask if there are any members of our local audience who wish to say something in support of this project.
So if any of the public would like to speak in favor, please use the raise your hand function or hit *9. I don't think anyone's going to speak in favor of it, Lee. If you'd like to move on to oppose.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak in opposition of this proposal? Apparently not. I would offer an opportunity to the representative from Caravelle, but I don't think it's necessary, given that there's no opposition and no comments.
No, well, thank you for the time and thank you for holding the hearing tonight. We're excited to get this project going. I think it's a great site and a great use for the site. And it's been vacant for a very long time. So we're excited to get going. We hope we have your support so we can keep it moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I will bang my gavel and move to close this item on the meeting agenda. I guess I will close the public meeting at this point, and that will allow the board to take care of business.
You want to handle the extension?
I don't have the paperwork in front of me. I'm trying to find it, but the
You want
one
me to read it? I could do that.
Go ahead. Thank you, Andy.
Item 190822-04, Perry and Diane Caminas. Variance to elevate existing non-conforming SFR and legalize parking within the front setbacks, section 118, 340C, 118, 800D, and 118, 122, 0C in B residence zone property at 11 Renovations Avenue, District B, Block 1C, Lot 1, Cam. And what they've requested is an extension. I think that's probably fairly understandable given our current situation with COVID-19. Applicant is requesting a 6-month extension of time in which to obtain building permits for the above referenced variance. The Zoning Board of Appeals approved the project August 22nd, 2019, with an effective date of August 30 to 2019. And staff has noted that if an extension of time is granted, building permits must be obtained by Wednesday, 26, 2020. And though we have other governmental reasons why things really couldn't have been proceeding, if you take that into consideration, you might even consider a longer approval for a 1-year delay.
I don't feel 1 year is out of the question. You know, we have no concept of when we're going to be coming out of this COVID situation. And even if they were to get a building permit, it might be a long drawn out affair given City Hall, contractors, et cetera. So I think giving them a year is quite reasonable.
Yeah, I do too, given the current circumstances.
I just want to clarify that the request for extension came in before well before the COVID-19 struck. So just to be clear that the request came in before the COVID-19. So this really had nothing to do with COVID-19. But if you want to give them extra time, that certainly makes sense.
I think I would like to, and I will make a motion that we grant them a full 1-year extension in which to obtain a building permit.
So that would take us to what, Aileen? February of 2021?
Yes, February of 2021 would be the 1-year extension. And that's the time they need in which to get building permits.
I'll
Yeah,
second that.
Only thing that, Lee, that you might need to do is, since we have an extra member tonight, is decide who's going to vote on what.
Okay. Who would like to step back on this?
I'm happy to step back if you like.
Okay.
That was great.
I remain an alternate member of this committee, so I think
Okay,
I do step back.
It might be you who steps back on this.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Sure.
And that would allow.
I think that's my job.
I'll talk to you about that later.
And you're very good at it.
Thank you.
All in favor of granting the 1-year extension?
Lee, if you'd like to do a roll call, it might be helpful just in case anyone doesn't have access to watching this. You want to do roll call vote?
Go right ahead.
Unmute Chris, unmute Greg, unmute Keith, and then I'm unmuted and Lee is unmuted. So that away we go.
All right, Lee, you want to call it out or you want me to do it?
I will make a motion that, we've got a motion. We've already seconded it. That was Keith. All those in favor of granting the 1-year extension signify by saying aye.
Andy says aye.
So let me start. Let me start with, I'll read off the names. I'll just start with what I see. So we'll go Mr. Gavrilides. Said aye. Mr. Conroy.
Aye.
Mr. Brasher.
Aye.
Mr. Levy.
Aye.
And Mr. Lyon.
Aye.
There you go. Passes unanimously.
We have unanimous approval.
To the February 2021 extension. Aileen, you'll specify exactly what that is, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, what's next?
What's next? We'll move up the agenda and item 20061801 Caravelle Subaru. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve it. This is Andy.
And I would second that. It's Keith.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to read out the names.
Please do.
All right, we'll go reverse. Mr. Lyon.
Yes.
Mr. Levy.
Yes.
Mr. Brasher.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Aye.
And Mr. Gavrilides. So it passes unanimously.
Very good. Okay. Item 20031901 for Westmere LLC. Discussion.
Well, we've taken the position in the past that we can't, and I presume we might stick with that position, give them a partial approval. In other words, if they came in, it had a piece in it that we didn't like, we can't say, oh, we'll approve everything except the part we don't like. We either approve it or we don't approve it. Is that your understanding?
I agree. My opinion on this is, it's well within their rights because zoning variances go with the land, not the building. It's entirely within their right to demolish this residence and build on its footprint. They are not allowed to expand on the footprint. However, they are permitted to build up within the confines of the zoning regulations. I think that's really what they've asked us. And my opinion says that on that basis, we need to, or we should approve this. However, I would like some comment regarding, being limited to construction activities on the property with no permitted work or equipment or materials on the public road, in the park, or anywhere else within Belle Island. I think we need to make it very clear that all work has to be restricted to the building site and nowhere else.
And how about parking on the street by construction vehicles? I walk that area at least 3 times a week. I know that the houses that have recently been constructed that would appear on my walks to have done a good job of confining themselves to constructing on the lot, but they're certainly parking on the street, which is being put forward by those opposed as an objection, but I can't really see how it would be possible to, not that I'm a builder, but to park your contractor vehicles on the lot and also build on. So I think I'm certainly supportive of everything you've said, Lee. I'm not sure that we can prevent them from parking on the street.
If there's public parking on the street, there's nothing we can do to prevent them from parking, just as if you wanted to park your car down there to take one of your walks, if there's public parking on the street, there's nothing that prohibits the contractors from parking on the street.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, so thank you. So I gather that much of this application is a matter of right, but I also think that the neighbors, all of them, concerns are valid concerns. The potential for damage to the park, to the wetlands in particular, and to the adjoining properties, I think are legitimate concerns on a small piece of property like that, that could come to pass even just through the excavation of the foundation for what they intend to build. So I don't know how it might be included in an approval for their application, but it certainly seems to me that the builder or the owner ought to be made aware of the concerns and issue some kind of a pledge that, if they break it, they're going to fix it.
Well, I think that, our responsibility is to look at the zoning, and we can put in a concern in our comments on this, but I would leave it to conservation and zoning to police the project. If they're going to ask for a bond to be provided, I think they have a mechanism where I don't think we really do have a mechanism for requesting a bond?
No, we don't.
Well, the expression of concern would be sufficient in that case.
Well, and as we write or state our approval, we will make it a concern over the adjoining properties, damage to the park, damage to the roadway, should be, taken care of by the applicant.
Isn't that somewhat assumed though? Like if I go and build next to you, Lee, and I knock down your wall, I'm responsible. Like, do we really need to call that out? Like it's private property, and if you damage it, there's different ways that should be resolved.
Well, I agree.
Is there any reason to include that?
Maybe we're taking a step beyond what we might normally do. And maybe we don't have to, because it doesn't fall within our purview.
I mean, my opinion is, to make it less complicated, is we don't need to. Like at the end of the day, there are other organizations in town that if they damage something, they impact the wetlands or the mussel beds, the oyster beds or whatever. Like they're going to have much larger problems than us. You know what I mean? So I'm not super concerned. My view on the property is, I find it very ironic. I looked up 6 Westmere, which was the nice woman that spoke before, and I looked at the Google Maps and I looked at the sidewalk view. And what do I see? I see 3 vans parked in front of her house doing construction. See a construction truck poking out of her driveway into the street, and I see 2 pickup trucks with tools and equipment in front of the Westmere Road. So like, there's a lot of construction on that road. I think all 4 to 5 houses across the street there either are under construction or have been newly built in the past 2 years. So it is a disaster zone, but it's I don't know, it is what it is, right? That stuff is happening, and I don't feel like we should punish the smaller lot. I do have some concerns though on that lot is tiny. My bedroom might be bigger than it, but yes, they can't be constructing things in the street. They can't be constructing things in the parking lot. So it's gonna be difficult for them to get it done on property there. But that's not really our problem either.
No,
like we can give them the approval based on the things, but they could have to figure that out.
What the contractor is going to have to do is schedule material and work, very tightly. He's not going to be able to, have every stick of lumber on the site. He may have to have lumber
It'll
delivered
be a problem for them
2-3 times a week. So,
Well, they can
it's going to be a problem.
They can put up a frame to a house using modern techniques in 2 days. So much of this could be reduced depending on who the contractor is and what skills he has.
I was even thinking possibility, if we weren't on such a tight site in this location, you could do modulars very easily, but getting them down the road and such presents a great problem.
Yeah. But if it's
frankly, how they do it, from our side, not our concern. I think I'm ready to pass a motion. I don't know if you guys are.
Greg, you want to make a motion?
Sure.
I'll listen to it.
I will make a motion that we approve this with the hardship being the lot size and the variant. I guess, am I saying it right? The lot size and the current variances they have in place.
And the configuration of the lot.
And
the configuration of the lot.
And the need to raise it above the flood level to meet the FEMA guidelines.
Right, to meet FEMA, yes. Will anyone second that?
I will.
All right, so I'll read off the names. Mr. Conroy.
Pass.
Mr. Brasher.
Pass.
Mr. Levy.
I'll vote to approve this.
Mr. Lyon.
Vote to approve.
And Mr. Gavrilidis.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously.
Okay. We're in all agreement here. Do we want to talk about meeting minutes from December 5th, 2019 and February 20th, 2020?
They're so old, they have grown mold.
Well, I was not at the February 20th meeting, so I can't comment the accuracy. I did read through the minutes of December 5th, and I had no issues with it. So if you'd like to pass and take this on at our next meeting, I'm glad to move on.
However you want to handle it, it's fine with me.
We'll pass on it this evening.
minutes.
Pardon?
Pass being approving.
No, he means
Yes.
skip.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right.
Does skipping the minutes have any impact onto what was decided, or does it just mean that this doesn't go in an official record until we pass them?
Means only the draft exists until this.
Exactly.
Okay,
Only
okay.
the draft. It's just,
Any
it's just easier to do it and get it done. Then it doesn't get on the next agenda and get carried over. And then you have 3 sets of minutes you have to approve.
Well,
I wasn't at either of these here, so I don't really have much feedback on them. So
why don't we ask that the board members that were present review the meeting minutes and be prepared at our next meeting to approve or deny these meeting minutes.
I thought you were going to say you were going to have a quiz. All right.
Not tonight, Andy. No quizzes.
All Is that a train car that you're in, Greg?
well, it's my virtual background.
Okay.
But yes, it
All right.
is the train that I normally take to work.
You're
All right,
missing
you
the
fooled me.
commute,
I thought you were actually in one.
so did I. Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Just like that.
Yeah, wolf
Wow.
gone.
Well, I'd like to say it was good to see everybody's faces tonight. And I will make a motion that we close this evening's meeting.
And I will second that.
All right, that's an all in favor one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye.
Yeah, aye. Good to
And
see you.
Brian, thank you
Yeah.
for your
Brian,
your
yes,
work.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Oh, no
Thank you.
problem.
Take care.
Got it.
Does
Everyone's
anybody want to
here.
hear about, does anybody want to hear about next month's meeting, or would you? I mean, we
oh,
just,
give
we
us
have-
a brief preview.
Teaser.
there are probably 5 applications that would be